you simply can't think about the future and think about others' needs and think about, again, what the world is going to look like without knowing that there's good things coming. Again, this topic is so near and dear to my heart. I'm so pleased that we have 106 of you on the webinar today. That's absolutely terrific. Hopefully you share all of our optimism today. And we so much thank our friends at Edlong for sponsoring and being a terrific part of everything we're doing today. So again, thank you all for joining us. We are doing a series of virtual events. So again, not just webinars, but virtual events. We think the quality of our speakers and our content sets us apart from many, many others. But we want to make sure that we keep this incredible food and beverage industry community that we've been building for 3 years, keep it connected and working together and collaborating. And we want to do it through events just like this. So just those of you who haven't used Zoom before, we give you an opportunity to experiment a little bit. Will you raise your hand? There's a raise your hand button. Will you raise your hand if you have not been to a Chicagoland Food and Beverage Network event previously? Wow, that's a lot of hands getting raised, and good job like keeping up with the technology. We're all becoming fluent in Zoom these days, right? Fantastic. Welcome to all of you. Again, we always want to keep a positive, and I'll say, again, innovative and sort of growth-oriented mindset, even in challenging times like this. Next slide. All right. For those of you who don't know the Chicagoland Food and Beverage Network, we are a mission-driven industry organization. For 3 years, we have been in place to leverage the power of the food and beverage industry in Chicagoland to grow the industry, grow the local economy, and create jobs. Our mission hasn't changed. Of course, the conditions lately have, and yet these things couldn't be more important now and will be more important over the next several months. We're excited about being part of making sure that, again, Chicago remains a great place to build and grow a food and beverage business, a great place to be employed in the food and beverage business, and that just, again, terrific, innovative things continue to come out of the greater Chicagoland area. Also, for those of you who may be more familiar with us, but one of our new initiatives is a thing called the Bigger Table. The Bigger Table brings together the food and beverage industry to address many issues in our local communities. Of course, none are more important now than making sure that everybody has access to nutritious and healthy food. We are seeing some challenges in our current supply chains, and we are witnessing some, I'll say, new and very interesting, very large challenges within our area food banks and feeding agencies. We're digging in on those and ensuring that those organizations have what they need to keep people fed, especially during these challenging times. If you are social media inclined, please follow us, all of us. We love to tweet and LinkedIn and Facebook message and all the other good stuff. Here's all of the hashtags for us and for Edlong and for others. We look forward to seeing you there, conversing with you there, and making great things happen. And today, I am so pleased to introduce 2 terrific speakers who are going to address this important topic. One, Laurette Rondenet, President and CEO of Edlong, also Vice Chair of the Chicagoland Food and Beverage Network, and Pam Henderson, Founder and CEO of NewEdge. With that, I'll turn it over to the 2 of you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Laurette's here as well. This is Pam. So Laurette.
Hi everybody. Nice to have you all here.
Yeah. So I'm going to kick it off. I'm Pam. I'm with NewEdge. I'm founder and CEO of NewEdge. So I want to just go ahead and share my screen. So hopefully you guys can see this. Everybody see my screen?
Yes. Looks
perfect.
Good.
You can also move faces. If you're not familiar with Zoom, you can grab our faces and slide them around if we're in the way. So trying to get this to come up on a slideshow, and it is not coming up on a slideshow, and I don't know why. It's just regular old PowerPoint. Okay, don't know why my thing is not coming up on a slideshow, but we are going to go with it because we are adaptive. So
I'm seeing a slideshow. I think you're okay.
Okay. Well, it is not advancing for some reason. It is okay. There we go. So here's what we're going to talk about. And Alan, awesome introduction. I am so excited about your enthusiasm. I feel like you really set the tone for what we need to be doing. I'm going to share some innovation principles that are relevant for today. Laurette's going to share some thoughts about innovation execution, and then we're going to try to save some time, 20-30 minutes at the end for Q&A, which you better have questions because it makes Zoom much more interesting. So I'm going to start with opportunity. So Alan talked about growth, and I will tell you it starts with opportunity. But what you may not have known is where the word comes from, and it's a super fun story because it comes from Latin, and it means it's ob portu, which means into port. Forever on, from today forward, all 106 of you will look at the word opportunity and you will see the word port in there. So what's it mean? Well, it turns out, and I am sorry about this, and I don't know why it is not going into slideshow, but it's not going to animate properly as a result. So are you guys able to, sorry about this, little technical difficulty, and it's on the PowerPoint end of the deal. Okay, well, I'll just tell the story. We are here to innovate, and we're here to just adapt. So the story is that ob portum and into port, and it started with the port. You would think that would be the opportunity, the needs, where all the market and the needs were, but it wasn't what they were talking about. And this is like late 1300s when all these new trade routes are popping up. So then you might think it was the boat with all the value propositions on it, also an important part of opportunity, but not what they were referring to. It turns out that they were referring to the conditions, which were the tide and the wind that brought the boat and the port together. And so what we see is that opportunity is really this combination of needs in the market, the value propositions that you have to deliver, and the conditions that make now the right time. Well, I think we can all agree that the really big bugaboo that we're facing right now is the conditions. So let's talk a little bit about the conditions and how they're changing. We know that they're changing a lot with COVID, but I want to give some examples of times where the need value conditions didn't work out. So P&G had an idea that was really before its time. They said, oh, look, people are eating a bunch of vegetables. There's all these outbreaks of foodborne illnesses. We're going to make this really cool vegetable wash that has value because it's got edible surfactants, it's got a great scent, it's easy for people to understand. But the problem was that the conditions at the time were heavily bricks and mortar, and retailers didn't like it because they didn't like the implications that they were selling dirty vegetables. So now we look and we say, well, the conditions have actually changed. And how did they change? Well, now that we have e-commerce, that product is selling through e-commerce because Amazon isn't worried about that implication. So question is, do we have to live with the conditions exactly as they are, or are there times that we can actually change the conditions? So I'm going to give a different P&G story. We worked with P&G, and it's a longer story, but they asked us how to get into Africa. And we were like, well, okay, look, Africa would love to have, rural Africa would love to have hygiene products, but the reality is they don't even have clean water. And clean water is the bigger need. And until you solve the problem of clean water, nobody's going to be spending money on hygiene products. So great value and potentially even life-saving value, but wasn't going to work. Well, what we ended up doing was going in and helping them form this entrepreneurial, social entrepreneurship model with a nonprofit where they gave away Pure as a free gift to people. And then on the back of that, women sold individual items of hygiene, whether it's feminine hygiene or soaps or an individual diaper. And it's actually helped health in that area, but it's also become the largest channel for P&G in Africa. So it's a great example of, yes, we're facing tough conditions right now, but there might be ways that we can either use the conditions to the advantage of the people we serve, or we can change the conditions. So what are some ways that we could think about conditions? Well, what we see is a lot of times when people look at trends, they end up being more informed, but not necessarily better able to take action. I have to think that most of you are going through what we're going through, which is just being a little overwhelmed by the trends. Every day there's just a gazillion more stories, and while it's super interesting and heartbreaking at the same time, it's also overwhelming. Even before this happened though, when we were working with companies, we did a study of just tons of companies, and we found that they weren't really able to take action after doing trends reports. First, they would do a deep dive into market trends and find that they were too close in and weren't really giving them new insight, that the voice of the customer wasn't really telling them new things. Then they would do a deep dive into maybe a single trend like personalized nutrition or Internet of Things, but then they wouldn't know how to take it back into their organization. And the third thing they do is they'd look at these extremes like zombie apocalypse, pandemics, or nirvana. And these approaches just didn't really help them figure out what to do. So we looked at it, and my background's an academic. It doesn't take long to see the nerd factor going on here. But we did this nerdy study, and we found that really what we needed to do was a systems approach. And that was to look at trends across the elements of your system. So every organization has a system. So most food companies have, packaging, manufacturing, commerce, innovation. Those are all part of their system. And then they have the end markets that they're serving: dairy, meat, snacking, whatever the end markets are. And then they also have these external influences that they're worried about, like sustainability, personal health and wellness, personalized nutrition, those kinds of things. So by taking a systems approach and looking at all the trends within those elements of the system, it's really fascinating because you start to solve for each element of the system. And when you bring it together, you're able to come up with opportunities that make more sense for your entire system. So these are some of the kinds of things I just ran through, just a lot of different examples. But when you take this approach, I'll tell you a real trick, and we're happy for you to have this slide too. When you start getting overwhelmed by something like COVID, you can start to break it down by how it's impacting different elements of the system. Alan already brought up supply chain. So obviously COVID's having huge impacts on supply chain, but it's also affecting how people think about their business models. It's hugely affecting commerce, but there's an interesting sticky aspect to that. And that is that, and this is really important, a condition we believe will not change after COVID is you have an older demographic buying things on e-commerce that they didn't used to buy, groceries and things like that. And once that older demographic becomes more comfortable with the technology, that is going to stick. And that opens the door for things like nutrition products or food products that you might target towards that demographic, but maybe you couldn't get them into bricks and mortar because they were too targeted. So we believe that there are really interesting conditions that are going to open up opportunity for our food clients. And there's other ones, things like how people are thinking about clean, how they're thinking about food safety. So these are value propositions that maybe you've innovated on, or transparency that you've innovated on, and you've put those innovations on the shelf because the market wasn't ready for them. But now the market's ready for them because of this pandemic. And it's not the pandemic alone, it's the mind shift that's taking place. So taking a systems view allows you to kind of pick apart very complex trend areas and break them apart and see where you might have new levers for innovation. So that's the first thing that we wanted to share because it just helps you kind of settle down the craziness with COVID. Okay, so the next thing, this is an example of how we've been helping folks think about these elements of the system. And so we'll do them across all these different elements. And one of the examples is just around the future of innovation. So in the future of innovation, a lot of times we think about what's going to be eaten, what kinds of things we should innovate on the future. Are people going to want more plant-based foods in the future? Are they going to want more elderly nutritional foods in the future? What's going to happen with dairy? All those kinds of questions, right? But we really need to also think about trends just in how innovation is being done. And I think what I'd encourage us all to think about right now is that not only does COVID open up opportunities for product areas, it can also open up opportunities for how we innovate. So for example, we're all interacting in a way that we've never interacted before. Well, how's that going to change how we get consumer insight? So when we look at the future of innovation, this is just one example, and we can send you this. There are a lot of trends in the future about how consumer insight is going to be done, how it's going to be done more digitally, more remotely, not with focus groups and so forth. And this situation that we're in right now are going to accelerate those and move some of them into the today column a lot faster. Equally, there's a bunch of things in the today column that you're probably not already doing. So these are best practices today, but there's a bunch of things that you might say, wow, some other companies are doing this today. We hadn't really tried that before. So like the first one on the screen here is that a lot of companies like P&G aren't launching products under the P&G name because they don't want to risk the name. They're launching them under sub-brands. Okay, now you might be
Pam, I want to let you know your slides are not advancing for those who are watching. So when you're referring to them, like we can't see those.
Okay.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to make sure that you knew that we couldn't see what's in front of you.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to start sharing again just to see if we can't get that fixed, because we've done a dry run, everybody, and everything was great. So this is a little sad for all of us, because I think everybody on the Chicagoland side knows that we were up and running on this. So I'm going to just stop sharing for just half a second, and we are going to relaunch this thing.
Also, we'll share all of these after the webinar on our site with all attendees. So,
yeah. So believe it or not, even the best laid plans, we had this thing, cranking yesterday.
Absolutely.
So we'll give it one more try here.
The only other thing is maybe you could send them to Alan or Andrea, potentially.
Sure, I think let's have Brittany do that. I know Brittany's online right now, so we will absolutely have Brittany do this.
I have never had to share my own either, so you're making me nervous that I'm not going to be able to share mine. So I hope you guys have mine. But this is what we do. We learn how to wing things. Wing it.
Absolutely.
Well, it is a little interesting. So pretty soon I'm just going to tell you what, I'm just going to go off script. So
that's always fun.
Laurette, my friend, you're going to pull up your slides. I'm just going to finish talking.
Okay,
We're not going to worry about that. I can talk the paint off the wall, so I don't really think I need slides. So let's stop the paint and I'll just tell you my story. So hopefully you can see me, and I'll just try to, maybe I'll do an interpretive dance of it. Okay, so what does innovation look like in a time of COVID? Well, what I think that we can be thinking about here is that we need to be thinking about the conditions not as overwhelming us or stopping us. We need to start looking for where there are perfect storms. And what I mean by that is, where do things start to come together to create tipping points? And I've used the example of personalized nutrition a couple times. I just want to give an example of that. It's really at the forefront. It's really early stages of development. But if we look at what kinds of condition it takes for something like that to take off, it takes having an older generation who needs that personalized nutrition to be adapting into e-commerce. It takes a sense of personalization and safety. So sometimes what we see is these trends start to come together. It takes maybe a more clunky supply chains can sometimes win in this environment. Supply chains that aren't as efficient can sometimes win in this environment. So I believe that there is breathing room that is opening up for certain kinds of offers. I also think there's a lot that's happening right now where people are starting to look more at how they're slowing down, they're exercising more, they're taking more attention to their own needs. And I think that that opens up opportunity. So I think that something Alan said that's really encouraging is that notion of optimism, and we think of it too as courage. And I think if we are courageous during this time, we can do a couple things. One, look for opportunities where there is potential for growth that maybe wasn't there before. And the other one is look for ways to innovate. So how could you connect with consumers in ways that we've never connected with consumers before. And some of the things that we've been doing is we're running virtual innovation sessions, we're running virtual growth assessments, and we're running virtual consumer groups right now. And we're running these virtual ecosystem. We've got ecosystem interviews that are happening virtually, where ecosystem members are coming together with clients and in virtual meeting rooms where the technology actually behaves itself. So I think it's just it's a heartbreaking time, and I'm not taking away from that. But as innovators, I also think now's the time to strike. So I'm going to pass it over to you, Laurette, and wish you well on your slides.
Okay, I'm going to try to share my screen. It says I can't while another participant is sharing.
I'm stopping sharing.
Okay, cool. And then there we go. And okay, I'm going to go to that one.
All right.
Yeah, way to go, girl.
Well, we'll see. I got to put my glasses on. Wait for just a second to get to the run slideshow.
There you go.
There we go. We've already seen this one, and don't even tell me. Oh, yay. Okay, so some of these are going to be a little goofy order, Pam, because I thought I was teeing you up. So bear with me a little bit on that. But I think that the comment about, where we are now and remaining hopeful is so true. We at Edlong are a very tight-knit community kind of company, and this being remote has been painful, and I know a lot of you participants are feeling the same way. We're doing the best we can to do team meetings like this and stay connected, but it's definitely a struggle. And I think the perspective is kind of what Pam, exactly what you were saying. Our perspectives have changed from going through this. So we have 3 buildings in Elk Grove that has always been like my curse, so I thought, is now a gift. So we are lucky and grateful to be an essential business, and the fact that we can separate our manufacturing and our production guys and keep them safe, and our shipping people and everybody else that has to be in the office right now is really a gift. And I think that this whole experience has made our perspectives change on a lot of things, just like you were talking about, Pam. So we are still innovating, and I hope that a lot of you all participants, lots of you I know are from the R&D world, are still innovating as well. It's different. We are very spread apart. We now are wearing masks, and I think it's really made us hone in on what are the important and the critical projects. We're reading The One Thing at Edlong, and it's been interesting how this situation and this life that we're living now really makes us find out what's important and what we should be innovating on, and it's kind of cleaning out some of the noise. I think it's one of the silver linings that's happening right now, and getting us all a little more focused, which is a lot of what Pam talks about when she helps you with strategic planning and such. So kind of want to try to use this raise the hand thing if I could be so inclined. Oops, that didn't work. So show me, and I think this is interesting too at Edlong. We're crazy busy right now, and I'm sure a lot of you guys are too. So I kind of want to see a show of hands of how many of you are still innovating, because we're still getting projects, we're still getting a lot of work, thank God. So just want to hear, how are you guys feeling? Just put up your hands on how many are still working on that innovation stream. Can you see that, Alan? Because I can't, and I'm scared to. And is anybody answering?
You have 25, 27, 28 hands raised.
Okay, cool. So we are still trying to stay positive. Oh, now I can see that. Cool. So I think when we started talking about this seminar, we talked about innovation now is really speed to market. We know that the startups, the emerging companies that are still relevant, even in the moment that we're in now, they have forced the multinational companies, the large companies, to really speed up their path to market. I was lucky enough to be on a podcast yesterday for Future Food Tech, which I know many of you guys know that group. And just to give some credit, because I stole some of the ideas from that podcast yesterday to today. So yeah. So one of the guys on the team on the call was Craig, and he's head of R&D at Campbell's. Had amazing stories. He was talking about when he came to Campbell's, they had to reinvent the whole way they innovate. It took 24 months to get something to market. We all know how that is with the big multinational. They brought it down to 9 months. And he said what they did is they really looked at technology companies that are so much faster than food companies. Food companies are historically slow. And he broke it down into the innovation model is insights, design, and commercialization. And what Pam brings to the table is insights. And Edlong, we've used her, and I think, and he was talking about that's so hard because you got to have the right insight to design the right thing, to commercialize the right thing. So we believe that's best done with collaboratively, you know, and that was really kind of the concept of this meeting, was to talk about how we all work together to collaborate on this innovation concept. So you got to find the expert in the field. So this is where I was going to be introducing you, Pam, but we kind of messed up that whole thing. But I was going to say she is the expert in the field of insights. So you spend a day with Pam and your head explodes because she's going through all of the conditions and the environment have to be right. And it's really insightful and helpful to focus. Because if you innovate on everything, you just can't do it. It's just too much. So you already met Pam, so we're going to skip over that. So we've been working with Pam. How long have we known each other, Pam? Years now. Met through
it's been
many years. So we have done some profound strategic planning, and this is just a picture of it. You don't need to understand what all that's saying, but what it does is really allow us focus and helped us to innovate more effectively. I don't know if you want to say anything on that, Pam. Feel free to jump in.
Yeah, no, I think this is I'm thankful that you're sharing this, because I think this is a real key, is this, we can have loads of insights. We can have loads of insights on trends, but if we don't drive focus, and we talk a lot about opportunity thinking, and so we try to focus everything around a few key opportunities for your organization, and it transforms how you go after those opportunities. Because what we see is a lot of companies just dabble. They dabble in lots of different places, but when you take an opportunity focus, you start to see that there are pieces of that opportunity you weren't really going after, that you were leaving on the table. And Edlong has been just phenomenal in doing some true moving the ball down the field in terms of improving the quality of things like plant-based foods. But if you don't focus on something like plant-based foods, then you sometimes miss how talented you are in certain areas. And like when I taste that,
it doesn't come easy. I mean, and I wouldn't even say we're there yet, but that focus is incredibly challenging. And I just wanted to, this was so fun. I don't even know, I think, was this your idea, Pam? I don't even know who to give credit for this idea, but I think it was you. But we did a cash cow, kind of like a Shark Tank idea. After we did strategic planning, we broke into teams, and there was captains and assistant captains, and we challenged them to present and go for resources like a Shark Tank. And we live streamed it. Thank God we did this, because it really helped us in this technology that we're in right now, that we stream this throughout the entire company. So people in Mexico and Ireland could be seeing it. And it really, again, back to focus, it made the teams focus on the one thing. You know, what's the one thing in that platform, in that territory that you guys are going to focus on? It was not easy. There was some literally blood, sweat, and tears going on. But it was profound. I think it energized, and I loved it. And I think, and Pam, you can chime in on this too, one of the biggest challenges to the focus is many of us are food scientists, and we do the scientific method. We are risk averse. We want to make sure it's perfect before it hits the market. We want to make sure that we've done all our CLT testing for months and months, back to the Campbell story of 24 months versus 9 months. We have to change. Again, the startups are forcing us to change. And I think they're right. This mindset of minimally viable, which is very hard to say 10 times fast, is really important. And we have struggled with this, but I believe in it. I believe that you gotta take a shot, and there's the book Mindset. We were talking about that in the podcast yesterday, that this is so important that you be growth minded and really try to remove the barriers along the way that stop you. So you got anything on that, either of you? Feel free. Pam, are you talking? Oh, there you go.
No, I think one thing that you've been doing though that's really fascinating, Laurette, is also measurement. Like we can talk about this stuff, but what I've seen Laurette do is she's driven all the way from a corporate level focus on some areas down into things like we did the cash cow. And then we also started doing analytics on time in the pipeline. And so it, you know, we say structure follows strategy and you get what you measure. And I think it's
You're
so
so
true.
good. And we didn't even practice this, but you got me right to where I wanted to be, that technology is a tool. And it's a new tool. Again, historically, the food industry is not, I mean, I remember 26 years ago being at Edlong and we had one computer, you know, and we weren't alone. That was kind of the way the food industry was. And we've come a long way. And I think this COVID moment is making us even go faster, but we know that technology is the tool to innovate. And I think that's so true. Artificial intelligence, which is something we were hoping to talk about more when we were going to do this live, and we hope to still do that live, but that has been huge. And I think looking at just what Pam's talking about, the measures and where are you deploying your resources? Huge part of the conversation yesterday too, with the likes of Griffith, so TC and Campbell's and Bayer, and really being able to focus again your resources on the right places and the right insights. And the other thing that came up, and I think this goes to what Pam was talking about as far as people's buying behaviors changing, is purpose-driven. The considerations now are so much more, I don't know, deep, more considerate of the earth, more considerate of all sorts of different reasons why people buy what they buy and how they buy. And I think this is something that's under leveraged a lot, and that we were talking about that yesterday as far as how important this really is. For Griffith, the example was they were talking about that they bring their purpose to life in the products that they nourish the world with. And I thought that was really cool. And our mission is to enrich the lives of those we touch. And this is huge. And I love the story, Alan, of the hot chocolate project for Bigger Table. Many of you might have heard about this project, but it fits in the innovation story. So I wasn't a part of the beginning of it, but I jumped in at some point on this and I loved it. So the mission, they gave themselves, 6 months to come up with a hot chocolate product that was this was all charitable. Everybody donated ingredients, they donated packaging, they donated time on their line. So it was a collaboration of an ecosystem of Chicago businesses coming up with this concept. From start to end, it was 6 months from start to launch, from concept to launch, 6 months. That's crazy good for a food industry product.
And with no budget. No budget, every single thing donated, which again,
it's chills. I just love that story. I love it. And I know it's just the beginning of many good things that's going to come out of that from Bigger Table. And we all loved it. And it was, competitors working together. It just warms my heart. So this purpose-driven stuff, I get kind of passionate about. I think another really cool thing that's happening right now in Chicagoland too, and I don't know if I think I mentioned that to you, Alan, so there's about 5 or 6 flavor companies in the area, and they started a coalition to us. So it's Edlong, a couple others, Bell, Fona, Synergy, Flavorcom. I'm probably missing somebody, but it was really the supply chain teams of our teams saying we are competitors, but we are friends and we are partners, and we're going to support each other through this. If you need manufacturing help, if you need supply chain help, that is so cool. I mean, those are the silver lining things that I think come out of the hardships that we're going through right now. So it's important. I think it's important to our consumers as well. So just as Pam was talking, I wanted to kind of bring up some of the things that we're doing differently in this innovation during a global pandemic, which none of us have ever experienced in our lives before. Sensory has been a really creative and innovative solution that our team has come up with that I'm sure you guys, I can't wait till we get to the question and answers, and I'd love to hear what you guys are all doing. So this is the old way. It looks like they're socially distancing, but this was before that. They're pretty spread out, but there's too many people in the room. So this is how we used to do sensory. And now you can see my Julie up there is leading them on a Teams, and she mailed all the samples to everybody's house, did it all over Teams. And they quickly, I mean, this was really quick. And then come out with the projective mapping, and this is what the end result looks like. And this is all done on the cloud. So everybody that's, you know, a taster can be uploading their results. And I think that it's just great that we're continuing to keep innovating even in interesting times. We're doing the same thing as Pam, meeting with customers, meeting with vendors. And I think another silver lining is it's really hard to get feedback from customers. Sometimes it takes forever. This is forcing that at least you can see the body language, you can, you know, connect with them, and you're not just mailing something over the fence and not really knowing what the reaction was. I think it's a benefit. So another innovative thing we did for the first time ever, we do all company forums. We call them once a quarter. And usually, of course, they're live and they're at Edlong. And so with this, you know, everyone's saying being united and connecting is so important. And I truly, truly believe it's true for all of us. Felt really good for me to see my people I haven't seen in 4 weeks. So the feedback that we got was awesome. And they said this was better than a live meeting. So they're like, let's do it more often. Kind of kept it to the point, and this, you know, that they could feel the love and the inspiration and the support of all of our people was just great. We ended with this crazy video of what the world needs now is love, sweet love. You've seen that on like Facebook. It's my dad's favorite, my mom and dad's both favorite song. And I thought it was, I'm like, all right, this is crazy, you guys, but I want to end on this. And my people are like, okay. Everybody was like, I'm crying. I loved it. It ended up being inspirational and it worked. But this is making us do innovative things. So I'm talking innovation beyond just R&D, but we're all thinking out of the box right now. And lastly, we did, and this isn't even released yet, so this is hot off the press, but we have an engagement team, and they said, hey, let's do a video of all of us that are working remotely to support the ones that have to go in. And kind of, you know, they're the brave ones and risking their lives every day. So I just got the sneak peek of this last night. Again, it made me teary-eyed. It was beautiful. But I thought this was so innovative. Great idea to make them feel supported and appreciated, mostly. I think that, oops, did not mean to go to that one. Sorry, delete. That wasn't supposed to be up there. So I'm good. I'm gonna be end sharing my screen now. Oh, ecosystem, that was the last one. That I love the ecosystem concept, and this was just an example of a great ecosystem and how important that really is. Okay, stop sharing.
Terrific, thank you. We've gotten lots and lots of questions. Let me start with a couple of things. The slides and the webinar will be posted within an hour on the chicagolandfood.org website. And again, open to all. If you have any trouble finding it, don't hesitate to email us at info@chicagolandfood.org, and we'll work through that. There are so many questions. Let's start with just a couple that came through the Q&A. We're seeing an increase in sort of feel-good foods, maybe because of anxiety or some other things. What are the two of you seeing in terms of that?
Ooh, decadence, Pam, our favorite conversation.
It is.
Yeah.
The COVID 20, all the 20 pounds. I made chocolate chip cookies for the first time in years, twice. One time just to eat the dough. Yes.
Yeah,
So,
I think that even before COVID, we had talked a lot about the experience and the emotional connection to nostalgic food, it's an escape. I mean, we need escape now more than ever, speaking for me. But yeah, I think that is huge and a big part of how we're surviving this, for sure.
I also think center of the store and the reliability, the ability to deliver in center of the store is huge. You know, we saw for a long time, a lot of our core clients, we've worked with almost every large food company, a lot of startups, but that what used to be premium brands, you know, so Smucker's used to be premium, and then some, you know, really high-end organic, non-GMO jelly comes out and Smucker's is no longer premium. Tropicana used to be the premium, and then something came in and kind of pushed them down. And so, and then you had the lower tier stuff going into dollar stores. And so what we've seen is these big core brands lose on the edges of premium and discount. But now we're seeing that they're kind of coming back because they are the mainstay. I think there's a sense of loyalty, Americana, and just the reliability of supply chain. And I do think it's a reminder of supply chain and food safety. And I think food safety is also going to increase in importance to people.
Absolutely. See, I hadn't bought canned foods in years, and now I found myself buying Campbell's soup and, you know, even some canned vegetables. So yeah, do we think the center store is going to is it back? Are we going to see some of those nostalgic brands? I mean, like, I ate Spam for the first time in, I think, 30 years, and it wasn't as bad as I remembered it. It was actually pretty good.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, I think everyone is definitely getting into stockpiling. So easy to do that. And hopefully innovation will continue with those older brands like the canned soups and the canned, you know, I think that there could be so much improvement with the tools that we have now to improve those products and make them more indulgent.
Yeah.
Terrific. So we got some sent via email in addition to the Q&A. Well, so we have lots to choose from.
I'm glad you can see them.
I can see them. I'm staring at them now, which is why I might not be looking at you. Are there any sort of new issues that companies are experiencing in commercialization? Like how do you launch in the midst of all this, or is this really saving this for a day in the near future? So sort of what are best practices around commercialization, just as you're thinking about it and discussing it with those who are innovating now?
I think people are still commercializing, which is amazing. And again, bravery was brought up somewhere, and I think Pam maybe said that. You know, I love that. I love the bravery of, we're going to keep going. I mean, we're going to do it smart. We're going to stay safe. We're not going to do anything crazy. But we are seeing launches still. So I think they're doing it a little slower and a little more cautiously, more, you know, personal health cautiously. But, and again, I think that minimally viable, Scrum, all those kind of conversations too, of not doing a lot of like the consumer insights, Pam, like you talked about, and doing a little more smaller scale.
Yeah, and I also think you can be scrappy in the food product, but you can also be kind of scrappy in how you innovate. And so like I know you guys couldn't see it, so apologies, but we have this big trends landscape on just how people are innovating. And so, for example, they're launching products. Companies were already launching products in pretty creative ways, like the one I mentioned about, you know, P&G launched under a different brand name. We've had food companies launch just on a college campus, kind of in these closed networks. And so I believe that if we take a hard look at the ways to innovate, that we can pick and choose some really cool things, like, you know, using social media to vet an idea, or, you know, a lot of people don't have enough to do with their time. So engaging them in a network of helping you choose an idea. I think this is the time to be more open, to be scrappy, to try things, to maybe not burden some of the processes internally. If you really have cumbersome processes about getting brand approval, then go do it under a different brand, do it under a different name, partner with a startup. So I think that there's a lot of scrappy things that can happen. And we can, particularly with e-commerce, we can test things that we wouldn't normally test.
So actually, that was going to be my next question. Are we seeing more going through sort of e-commerce channels? I mean, we're ordering online, at least in my house, far more than we have in the past. So again, obviously that's an opportunity as well.
Yeah, it is. And it's an opportunity to use e-commerce in other ways, to look, obviously at Amazon, but to look at more niche sites. I think a lot of people forget that there's a lot of really niche sites out there, like on some of these specialty areas, sites that just focus on gluten-free or just focus on plant-based or more purpose-driven. And I think we need to be more creative and not just think about like, I'm going to launch this via Amazon.
Got it. So one thing we're also seeing an increase in is social media. All of us have a little bit more time in front of our computers, and you can always check Insta or Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn for something. What do you think the implications of that are for food companies? Is now a good time to reach out? What are your thoughts on that?
I've loved watching, particularly on LinkedIn, how companies are pivoting right now. Again, it's kind of back to the purpose and the we're all in this together concept. And flavor companies have the raw materials to make hand sanitizer. Who knew? News to me. And seeing all of, when there was a shortage, all of them rallying together and pivoting, and even the ventilators coming from, the car manufacturers. I think that kind of use of social media is amazing and powerful.
Yeah. I agree with that. And I think too, so much of our effort in marketing a product is trying to figure out how to do messaging on a tiny little piece of packaging, right? And yet when you are going through those innovation sessions to figure out what that messaging is, you usually have a bigger story that you could tell about the attributes. And so I think now is the time to go and not just, again, use social media, but get really scrappy about finding those ecosystems of people that are thought leaders in particular areas. So one of the things that NewEdge was founded on is what we call the voice of the ecosystem instead of the voice of the customer. And it was because the voice of the customer keeps us close in sometimes when we need to stretch. So we've been really scrappy about finding these pockets of people that are having dialogues. And so it might be a chef, or it might be a blogger, or just some opinion leader or nutritionist, and they have their own following. And I think just respectfully going to them and saying, I'd love to have a dialogue. We've had these different stories we want to tell about this product, like what's meaningful, what's credible, and just being a little bit more scrappy about just connecting with people. And people are really hungry for that connection right now. So I feel like it's a moment in time that we could really have dialogues we're not normally having. You have to be pretty purposeful about it and creative about it.
And I would say authentic, obviously.
Yeah.
You gotta be real.
Yeah, totally. But I think it's a time when we can be more real and a little bit more vulnerable.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Got it. So we have another question. How do you see the current role of academic institutions, even post-pandemic, on assisting with innovation in the Chicagoland industry? And I'll dig in a little bit on this. I think we do need to make a much tighter connections with our local academic institutions. I think when we go looking for talent, a lot of that sort of Midwestern, I'll say, food science and food professional talent does find its way to
Big Ten.
Yeah, does find its way to the Chicagoland area. But I would say as Chicago, we need to do a much better job linking to the terrific food science and food universities that we have here in town. Illinois Tech, certainly, University of Illinois, I'll say both campuses, both UIC as well as UC, if I'm saying that all correctly. And there's probably some others I'm forgetting as well. Any thoughts, Laurette?
I think that I love that topic, I think it starts well before university. So one of the boards I'm on that Alan knows about is the YAY, it's the Young Entrepreneurial Association. And in Chicago, that chapter of YAY is just young women from the age of 6th grade to high school. It's entrepreneurial in spirit, but we're pushing it to get more, science and food science too. But it's an amazing program, and watching these young women at that age, it's just it's a tipping point for all sorts of things, confidence, but supporting them even younger than university and getting them into important stuff. And there's this saying, if they can't see it, they can't be it. And I think it's the same with all, boys or girls. teaching them of the huge and wonderful opportunity in the food industry. From, you know, it's just a great industry to be in. So I think they are a huge part. They're a huge part. And it starts, you know, even getting, I was supposed to be at, I should have just jumped into that call I was telling you I was on for my son's science class and started pitching food science. But I was supposed to be at one of the entrepreneurial things at his school and talking about it. And I think we can't do that enough. To really have awareness of how important this industry is.
I love that. And I would just build on it to say that I would go beyond just food science, where we've found so much benefit in the ecosystem is we've got this food anthropologist that's one of the members. We have about 4,000 people in our ecosystem. And this food anthropologist, I mean, she is just golden. And she's a
I never knew that was a thing. I mean, a food anthropologist.
I know, and it's so beautiful. And then we've been seeing such interesting things by a lot of professors right now writing interesting articles on what we're going through, but sociologists, anthropologists. There's some fascinating people. I used to be a professor at Carnegie Mellon, and I was in the business school. And so there are a lot of really interesting people in the business school and also in the design schools. So I just think broadening our perspective on who has a point of view on food, it's marketing,
Right.
And then packaging scientists too, I wouldn't leave them out, because I think material science and packaging is a really big area for innovation right now. We have on our staff, we have people with, you know, capabilities in packaging that I think are just bring so much insight into food.
I always said if I wasn't in flavors, I would like packaging. It is the most creative. I mean, you just think about why you go grab that jug of half and half versus the other one. It's packaging. You know?
Yeah.
Right. Let's do one more question, and then we'll ask for the audience to actually give us feedback on what they're innovating on. So food service has changed a lot in the past 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Like all that time is sort of blurring together. What do we think is going to happen there? And I'll say sort of short term and long term, and how might that change the way we think about at least innovation in that particular corner of the industry?
I just heard of an article that I thought was brilliant of a restaurant taking donations and sponsorships for all the first responders. And they got like $2,500 in the first day to prepare the food for these hospitals. And I think that is just brilliant. And again, it's pivot, right? It's like they have been really creative on how they've been pivoting. And the curbside, and then making family type meals. I have been a huge supporter of the restaurants around here. I believe in them, and I think it's incredibly important. I think it's a good question, what's going to happen after. And Pam, I'm sure you have insights on this.
Well, I certainly don't have a crystal ball, but we have done some of these trends landscapes on just what's the future of cities, what's the future of transportation, what's the future of food. And what happens when you start to look at all of these different views is you start to see that they really are layering on top of each other. So like in big cities where you're getting to restaurants via Uber, I'm not sure what's going to happen with ride sharing, because I don't think everybody's going to just say, let me jump into a car that 40 other people have been in today. So I do think we're going to see some changes with ride sharing. I think we're going to see some permanent and fairly long-term downtrend on dining in because of shared vehicles and transportation and social distancing. I think we saw a trend with what are called aggregators, which is like the Ubers and the Uber Eats and all of those guys. I do think we're going to see an increase in aggregators and in ghost kitchens where, like a warehouse is making, 10 different cuisines and just shipping them out. So I do think that our branded restaurants are going to have a pretty tough time of it. I am concerned about that sector. But I don't think food service is going to die. I just think it might shift. So I think those are some things. And then I do think that there is a lot of room for social entrepreneurship in this space, which kind of marries up what you're saying, Laurette, and then what happened with Bigger Table. Those are really social entrepreneurship models. And I think we are going to see an increase in homelessness, and in we don't have enough. Our work on the future of living spaces shows we don't have enough low-income housing. So I do think we're going to see some pretty gargantuan rips in society on that. Not to be depressing, but I think that what Chicagoland did with Bigger Table, I think we actually included Bigger Table in one of our scenarios. So you know, it's just breathtaking what you guys accomplished. And so I do think that there's some room in food service for more of a social entrepreneurship model, which isn't a nonprofit purely model, but it does fit models.
I agree.
Terrific. In the last sort of 5 minutes we have left, there was a great question asked up front, and I think everybody can use their chat feature. And we're not asking for proprietary detail here, but would love to hear what it is you're innovating around. What are you working on? Again, we're not asking for proprietary detail, but just sort of what things are your companies doing in terms of innovation? Is it new product formulation? Are you looking for, you know, new industries, new categories, new territories? Would love for you to type some of that into your chat feature even right now, and so we can all see it. We'll even read out some of them and call them out as we go.
I've been curious if any of the R&D teams have set up little labs in their houses. You know, I mean, we had been that scrappy at Edlong in Mexico before, and it worked. And I'm like, would that work again? You know, so far we haven't had to do that, but yeah, it would be great to hear what the bigger multinationals are doing.
Yeah, Laurette, on that point, we got super scrappy, and we were mixing a bunch of plant-based stuff together with some animal-based products to just try to understand, you know, a bunch of different attributes and so forth. And yeah, you can do a lot in your own kitchen.
Yeah, and really the whole intention, if we remind ourselves, which seems like forever ago, of this meeting when it was going to be live, was a lot of tasting for you guys. You know, I mean, we really wanted to do a lot more of, because that's how you experience everything. You know, it's, you got to taste some stuff. And so
fingers crossed we'll be able to do that soon.
Yes.
And in the meantime,
I think the mail aspect of our world is going to be booming because everything is getting mailed. You know, that's going to be a need.
And we're getting some great answers. So some are innovating in the plant-based cheese sector, working on multiple product reviews, recipe creations, going back to basics, new products and business models for a CPG client, new business model for a nonprofit. Someone does have a small bench at home for seasonings.
Yay! I think that's cool.
Applications, doing mini labs at home, everything back to simplicity.
I love that. That's beautiful.
I love that. So I'm going to say yay for the new business models, and something that if you're working in business models or interested in business models, we should talk, because we've got a landscape that's just on the future of business models themselves, like how are business models changing independent of the industry. So it gives you kind of this appetizer platter of all the possible ways to think about business models. So yay for new business models. Go team.
That's cool. Yeah, and I would also say, like, I didn't think of that until you were just talking about that, but we're using this time so much to clean up.
Yeah.
We all need to do that. I mean, I've cleaned every closet in my house. I have not done the garage yet, but cleaning up pipelines, data.
Yeah.
It's a rare moment that we have this pause. So I'm expecting that when we are all back live, we are going to be crystal clean.
Absolutely. Someone just, Lloyd Sapra just said, innovative supply chain and sourcing. I'm hearing a lot about folks learning things about their supply chain they didn't know until it was put under a little bit of stress to really to understand exactly what was there and where things were coming from. And like,
yeah, that's my Lloyd. Hi, Lloyd. Yeah, and that is so true. And knowing, like, we're trying to, you know, preempt everything right now, and the businesses that are booming, make sure we have raw materials for them, know which ones are in food service, and we're going to feel a softness there. And it has been quite an analysis time, lots of analysis and learning.
We're right at 12:30, so I do want to make sure we end right on time for everyone. Everyone can go to their kitchen and make a sandwich now, right? Or
you don't have another 10 meetings. Hopefully you can go make a sandwich.
Exactly, right? I did want to call out, I neglected to mention the date. We do have an alternate date scheduled on October 8th, when we would do what was originally planned as an in-person meeting at Navy Pier on that beautiful, unbelievable, was it world's largest sky deck, I think. We hope to be back there on October 8th. It is planned currently, and we are crossing our fingers that everything will work. So we hope that we'll see many of the folks that attended today for kind of the long form version of this, with some tasting, delicious food, and
lots more
other
hands-on
terrific stuff as
too,
well.
and hands-on conversations for sure. So it'd be more interactive.
Terrific. Thank you all. Again, all of the materials are posted on the website as a follow-up. And I want to celebrate a little bit. I'll take any moment to celebrate. This is the first time we've gone over our Zoom quota of, we were at 108 people. So 100 people on a webinar is pretty impressive. So amazing work. Amazing work
I
today.
pretended like I was talking to you two the whole time. That helped, but so glad we had so many people. Thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate it.
Yes, Laurette and Pam, thank you so much. Terrific stuff.
Our pleasure.
Wonderful.
Bye,
Have
all.
a great day, everyone.
You too.
Bye-bye.